Welcome to this sanctuary of shadow and silence. Before we begin our journey upward, let us first ground ourselves in the comfort of right now. Allow your eyelids to grow heavy, heavier still, until they feel like soft velvet curtains closing on the theatre of the day. There is nothing left for you to solve, nothing left for you to organise, and nowhere else you need to be. You are safe here, cocooned in a space that is entirely your own, a warm stillness that wraps around you like a protective blanket. Breathe in slowly, filling your lungs with the cool, calm air of the night, and as you exhale, imagine a wave of relaxation washing down from the crown of your head, easing the tension in your brow, loosening the tightness in your jaw, and flowing down through your shoulders. Let your body sink deeper into the surface beneath you. Feel gravity becoming a gentle friend, holding you securely so that your mind is free to float. We are preparing to leave the noise of the world behind, to ascend a staircase of starlight, rising above the clouds, above the atmosphere, to a place of perfect ancient peace. Tonight, we turn our gaze toward the celestial companion that has watched over every night you have ever known. We travel to the moon, but this is not a lesson of dry facts or cold numbers. It is a drifting voyage through time and space, a collection of truths whispered by the cosmos. We will explore the silver glow that paints your bedroom floor, the silent craters that hold the history of the solar system, and the invisible threads that pull the tides of our oceans. Picture yourself floating weightlessly in the great dark expanse, looking down at the silver sphere. It is a world of quiet contrast, of bright highlands and dark seas, a silent guardian that asks for nothing but your wonder. As we embark on this stream of knowledge, let the words wash over you like a slow, rhythmic tide. If you drift into sleep, let go. If you stay with me, let us wander together through the landscape of dreams. Relax now, deeply and completely, as we begin to unravel the mysteries of the night. Long before there were eyes to look up and marvel at its glow, the moon began its story in a moment of cosmic transformation. Picture the early solar system, a chaotic and beautiful dance of molten rock and swirling dust. It is believed that our own Earth, young and fiery, met with another wandering planet, a body the size of Mars known as Theia. Imagine this not as a violent collision, but as a spectacular merging of materials, a splash of liquid fire thrown into the dark canvas of space. From this great encounter, a cloud of debris was cast into orbit, a ring of glowing dust and rock circling our world like a halo of embers. Over eons, gravity, the patient sculptor of the universe, began to gather these fragments. Visualize the dust motes finding one another, the molten droplets coalescing, slowly binding together to form a single glowing sphere. It was a chaotic birth that eventually cooled into the serene silver companion we know today. This process of cooling was slow, a gradual quieting of the fires. As the surface solidified, it locked in the history of that ancient time, a time capsule formed from the very material of our own planet and its visitor. When you look up at the moon, you are seeing a part of Earth that was cast away, a sibling formed from the same stardust, cooling in the lonely vacuum to become a mirror for the sun. It is a reminder that even in the vast emptiness of space, nothing is truly separate. We are born of the same collisions, the same fires, the same swirling dust that eventually finds its form and settles into peace. As we drift further along the timeline of this celestial relationship, we notice a subtle, almost imperceptible movement. The moon, though it seems fixed and loyal in our sky, is slowly drifting away from us. It is a long, lingering farewell that has been happening for billions of years. Imagine a very long, invisible tether connecting the Earth to the moon, and with each passing year, that tether stretches just a fraction more, allowing our satellite to wander slightly deeper into the darkness. This movement is driven by the transfer of energy, a cosmic conversation between the rotation of the Earth and the orbit of the moon. As the tides rise and fall on our planet, they create friction, a gentle drag that slows the Earth's spin and pushes the moon outward. Visualize this expanding distance not as a separation, but as the expansion of a breath. Inhale, and the moon is close. Exhale, and it drifts a tiny bit further, expanding the sphere of its influence. It is said that the moon moves away from us at the same speed that fingernails grow, a pace so slow it is invisible to the human eye, yet relentless in its consistency. This gradual retreat ensures that the moon remains a constant in our skies for eons to come, a slow-motion departure that will outlast civilizations. It creates a sense of deep time, a reminder that the universe operates on a clock much grander and slower than our own, a rhythm of eons that invites us to slow down our own racing thoughts to match the leisurely pace of the stars. Despite this slow drift into the distance, the moon remains profoundly connected to us in its posture. As you float in space observing it, you might notice that the moon always shows us the same face. This phenomenon is known as tidal locking. It creates a sense of intimacy, as if the moon is a dancer who refuses to break eye contact with her partner, spinning on her axis at the exact same speed that she orbits the Earth. Visualize this synchronous rotation as a perfect waltz. If the moon were to spin just a little faster or a little slower, we would eventually see the far side, the hidden face. But the gravitational grasp of the Earth has slowed the moon's spin over millions of years until it matched its orbit perfectly. It is a gesture of cosmic loyalty, ensuring that the man in the moon, the rabbit, the lady, whatever shapes our ancestors saw in those dark patches, remain fixed and familiar to every generation of humanity. This locking means there is a side of the moon we can never see from our backyards, a mysterious hemisphere that faces forever out into the deep void of space. While we rest under the gaze of the near side, the far side acts as a shield, constantly exposed to the unfiltered cosmos. But for us down here, the moon remains a familiar portrait, a constant friend that never turns its back, offering a sense of stability in a spinning, changing universe, a fixed point of reference in the turning night. Now, imagine descending from the orbit, drifting down like a feather toward the grey, powdery surface. As you land, you are greeted by a sensation that is rare and precious: absolute silence. The moon has no atmosphere to carry sound. There is no wind to rustle the dust, no rustling leaves, no crashing waves. It is a world of perfect, unbroken quiet, a vacuum where sound simply cannot exist. Picture a heavy rock falling from a cliff face on the moon. It would tumble in slow motion, bouncing and settling into the regolith, but it would make no thud, no crack, no echo. The impact would be purely visual, a silent movie playing out against the backdrop of the stars. This silence is profound and heavy, a blanket of peace that covers the entire world. It is the ultimate library, the ultimate sanctuary for rest, where the noise of traffic and chatter and machinery has never penetrated. In this vacuum, the sky above does not turn blue. Even when the sun is shining on the surface, the sky remains a deep ink-black velvet, studded with stars that do not twinkle. Without air to scatter the light, the heavens remain eternally open. Standing there, wrapped in the soundless void, you would feel a disconnection from all the chaos of existence, bathed in a stillness so deep it resonates within your very bones, quieting the internal monologue of the mind until it matches the silence of the surroundings. Standing on this silent surface, you become aware of the light. We call it moonlight, but in truth, the moon holds no light of its own. It is a ghost of the sun, a reflection cast upon a canvas of dark rock. The surface of the moon is actually quite dark, similar in colour to worn asphalt or old coal, yet it possesses a magical quality called albedo, the ability to reflect the fierce radiance of the sun and soften it into the gentle silver glow that washes over our sleeping world. Visualize the harsh, blinding rays of the sun travelling through the vacuum of space, striking the dusty grey hills of the moon. In that impact, the light is transformed. It loses its heat and its intensity, bouncing back toward Earth as a cool spectral beam. This transformation turns the fiery gold of day into the liquid silver of night. It is a light that does not demand attention or wakefulness. It is a light that invites dreaming, a lantern that illuminates the path to sleep without burning the eyes. This reflected light has guided travellers, sailors and night walkers for millennia. It creates shadows that are long and sharp, painting the world in monochrome. When you bathe in moonlight, you are bathing in a softened echo of the sun, a second-hand luminance that has travelled nearly 100 million miles, bounced off a silent dusty rock, and travelled another 250,000 miles just to reach your pillow. It is a journey of light that ends in a soft caress upon your face. As your eyes adjust to this silver illumination, the texture of the ground beneath you comes into focus. The moon is covered in scars, vast circular depressions known as craters. These are the fingerprints of the universe, records of impacts that happened billions of years ago. On Earth, wind and water and growing forests would have erased these marks long ago, smoothing the land back to perfection. But here, in the stillness, nothing changes. Visualize a crater like Tycho or Copernicus, vast bowls carved into the crust, because there is no erosion, no rain to wash the soil and no wind to blow the dust. A footprint left on the moon today could remain there for 1,000,000 years, perfectly preserved. The craters are time capsules, freezing moments of violence into eternal monuments of peace. They create a rugged, textured beauty, a landscape that tells the story of the solar system's history without saying a word. Imagine standing on the rim of one of these great basins. The shadows inside are absolute black, hiding secrets in the deep shade, while the rims catch the sunlight and gleam like diamond dust. It is a landscape of high contrast, of permanence. It reminds us that there are places where time moves differently, where the past is not lost but is held gently on the surface, displayed like art in a gallery that never closes, a testament to endurance and the beauty of surviving the ages. Stretching out between these rugged highlands and cratered rims are vast flat plains that the ancient astronomers once mistook for oceans. They called them maria, the Latin word for seas. While they hold no water, they are seas of solidified lava, ancient flows of basalt that smoothed over the lower regions of the moon eons ago. They appear as the dark patches we see from Earth, forming the face of the man in the moon. Picture these maria, the sea of tranquility, the ocean of storms, the sea of serenity. The names themselves induce a state of calm. Imagine walking across the sea of tranquility. It is flat and wide, a dark grey desert stretching out to the horizon. It is smoother than the highlands, a place where the chaotic history of impacts was paved over by the warm blood of the young moon, creating a level foundation of rock. These dark seas absorb the light, creating the contrast that gives the moon its character. They are vast plains of silence, frozen waves of stone that have not moved in billions of years. To look upon them is to look upon a calm that is absolute. There is no tide in this sea of stone, no crashing surf, only the endless flat expanse of history, offering a visual place to rest your mind, a wide open space where nothing is required of you but to observe the stillness. As you traverse these dry seas, you would notice a change in your own body. The moon is smaller than the Earth, and its grasp on you is far gentler. Gravity here is only 1/6 of what you're used to. Imagine the sensation of your body losing its heaviness, the earthly anchors releasing their grip, leaving you as light as a dandelion seed caught in a gentle breeze. If you were to take a step, you would not plod or trudge, you would float. A simple stride becomes a slow-motion bound, a graceful arc through the vacuum. Picture yourself leaping effortlessly over a grey boulder, hanging in the air for seconds that stretch out longer than they should, before drifting softly back down to the dust. It is the closest sensation to flying, a liberation from the weight that pulls at your shoulders and spine all day long. This low gravity relaxes every muscle. The tension required to stand upright on Earth evaporates here. Your heart doesn't have to work as hard. Your limbs feel airy and fluid. It is a dreamlike state of being, where the physical burden of the body is lifted, allowing your spirit to feel unencumbered, buoyant, and free. You're a creature of the air here, bouncing softly across the silent grey dunes, weightless and serene. Though we are far away, floating in the low gravity of the moon, its influence reaches back across the void to caress the earth. We feel the moon's presence most deeply in the rhythm of our oceans. The tides are the Earth's response to the moon's gravity, a planetary breathing that rises and falls twice a day. Imagine an invisible string connecting the centre of the moon to the centre of the Earth, pulling gently on the waters of our world. Visualize the great oceans bulging outward toward the moon, a mountain of water moving silently across the globe. As the moon orbits, it drags this bulge of water with it, causing the tide to creep up the sands of the beach, covering the shells and the stones, and then slowly receding, pulling back to reveal the ocean floor. It is a heartbeat, a pulse that has continued uninterrupted since the oceans were born. This connection reminds us that we are physically linked to the heavens. The water in your body, the blood in your veins, acts in sympathy with this great pull. The moon creates a rhythm for life, a cycle of rising and falling, of fullness and emptiness. It is a comforting predictability, knowing that the tide will always return, that the water will always respond to the sky, a dance of gravity that rocks the cradle of life on Earth back and forth in a soothing, eternal tempo. Finally, let us drift back toward the surface of the Earth, standing on a grassy hill at twilight, watching the moon rise above the horizon. Here, we encounter a beautiful trick of the mind known as the moon illusion. When the moon hangs low in the sky, peeking over the treetops or the silhouettes of distant buildings, it appears colossal, a giant glowing orb that seems close enough to touch. This is not a magnification of the atmosphere, but a mystery of human perception. Our minds compare the moon to the terrestrial objects, the trees, the houses, the hills, and in that comparison, the moon is rendered majestic and overwhelming. Picture a harvest moon, deep orange and swollen, resting on the horizon line like a heavy fruit ready to be plucked. It dominates the view, filling the sky with its warm presence. As it rises higher into the vast empty dome of the night, it seems to shrink, becoming the small silver coin high above. But that moment at the horizon, where the celestial world meets the earthly world, creates a sense of awe and proximity. It makes the cosmos feel accessible, intimate, and grand. It is a visual lullaby, a heavy, warm light that signals the end of the day and the beginning of the time for rest. A giant guardian rising to watch over your slumber. As that guardian orb rises higher, shedding its illusion of size to become a concentrated beacon of silver, we begin to notice the slow, rhythmic breathing of its shape. This is the dance of the phases, a celestial waltz played out over the course of 29.5 days. Visualize the moon not as a static rock, but as a living sculpture of light, constantly changing, waxing and waning, in a cycle that has governed calendars, tides, and harvests since the dawn of human memory. It is a slow transformation, a reliable clock hanging in the heavens. Imagine this cycle as the slow opening and closing of a cosmic eye. It begins as a sliver, a delicate fingernail of light in the western sky, growing night after night, expanding its belly until it becomes the full, radiant sphere that banishes the dark. And then, just as slowly, it retreats, the shadow creeping back across its face, paring it down once more to nothing. This rhythm is the heartbeat of the night sky, a reminder that nature moves in circles, that fullness follows emptiness, and that light always returns after the shadow. It invites you to breathe in time with it, inhaling as the moon waxes to fullness, filling your spirit with light, and exhaling as it wanes, letting go of all that you no longer need. There comes a moment in this cycle when the sky seems empty, a night known as the new moon. This is the phase of rest, the pause between the breaths. During the new moon, the sun and the moon are aligned on the same side of the earth, and the face that looks down upon us is plunged into shadow. It is there, invisible, hanging secretly in the daytime sky, or lost in the blackness of night, a ghost present but unseen. Visualize the sky on a night of the new moon. Without the floodlight of the lunar surface, the stars are unleashed. They burn with a ferocity and brilliance that is otherwise dimmed by the moonlight. The Milky Way stretches across the dome like a river of spilled milk, bright and textured. The new moon teaches us the beauty of darkness, showing us that when one light is extinguished, a billion others are revealed. It is a time for new beginnings, a blank canvas in the sky inviting you to plant the seeds of your intentions in the fertile soil of the dark, knowing that the light will slowly return to nurture them. Yet, even when the moon is merely a slender crescent, a delicate hook in the twilight, it is never truly dark. Look closely at the shadowed portion of a crescent moon, and you will see a faint ghostly glow. This phenomenon is known as earthshine, or sometimes the old moon in the new moon's arms. It is a poetic interplay of light, a reflection of a reflection. Sunlight bounces off the earth, off our clouds, our ice caps, our oceans, and travels to the moon, illuminating its dark side with a soft ashen luminance before bouncing back to our eyes. Picture yourself standing on the moon at night, looking up at the earth. Our planet would appear 4 times larger than the moon does to us, a brilliant swirling marble of blue and white. The light from the full Earth is so bright on the lunar surface that it bathes the lunar night in a soft blue-grey twilight. When we see Earth shine, we're seeing the light of our own home reflected back to us, a cosmic mirror showing us our own radiance. It is a gentle reminder that even in our darkest moments, we are casting light outward, influencing the universe in ways we cannot always see, illuminating the shadows of distant worlds. As the sun slowly rises over the lunar surface, it creates a moving boundary between day and night, a line of stark contrast called the terminator. This is not a line of sudden change, but a slow, creeping sunrise that moves across the rock. Because the moon spins so slowly, it takes 2 weeks for the sun to cross the sky. If you were standing on the terminator line, you would witness a sunrise that lasts for hours, the shadows stretching out for miles, long and distorted, reaching toward the horizon like dark fingers. Visualize these shadows. Because there is no atmosphere to scatter light, there is no soft grey transition, no dusk or dawn as we know it. There is only brilliant, blinding sunlight and absolute ink-black shadow. A mountain peak might catch the light while its base remains hidden in the deep dark. It is a world of drama, of high relief, where every crater, rim and boulder is etched in sharp definition. As the terminator sweeps across the landscape, it reveals the texture of the moon, bringing the flat grey disk to life as a 3-dimensional world of mountains and valleys, a slow reveal of the rugged beauty that lies waiting in the dark. If you were to kneel on that surface and run your gloved hand through the soil, you would feel the strange reality of lunar regolith. We call it dust, but it is unlike any sand on Earth. Earthly sand is smoothed by wind and water, tumbled into round, soft grains over millions of years. But on the moon there is no wind, no water. The dust here is created by the violent impact of meteorites, shattering rock into microscopic, jagged shards. It is a powder as fine as flour, but as sharp as broken glass. This regolith clings to everything. The astronauts who walked there described it sticking to their suits, their boots, their tools. When they returned to the safety of their lander and removed their helmets, they noticed a distinct scent clinging to the dust. The moon, they said, smells like spent gunpowder, like the aftermath of a firework or a fireplace on a cold winter night. It is the scent of ancient chemistry, of solar wind implanted into the rock. Imagine walking through this charcoal grey powder, your footprints pressing into the sharp, silent history of the ground, leaving marks that will hold their shape for eons, a permanent testament to a momentary visit. On this airless world, without a blanket of atmosphere to distribute the heat, the temperature swings are wild and immediate, a constant oscillation between fire and ice. When the sun beats down on the lunar equator, the rock creates a baking heat, boiling water instantly, hotter than any desert on Earth. Yet, step into the shadow of a boulder, or wait for the 2-week night to fall, and the temperature plummets to a cold deep enough to freeze air itself. Visualize this duality. It is a world of extremes, where you could stand with one foot in the searing light and the other in the freezing shadow. It makes us appreciate the thick, comforting blanket of Earth's atmosphere, which mixes the hot and the cold into the gentle breeze we feel on our skin. The moon has no such insulation. It is raw and exposed to the full energy of the cosmos. This cycle of baking and freezing causes the rocks themselves to expand and contract, a slow, thermal breathing that cracks stones over millennia, a silent weathering driven purely by the light of the sun and the cold of the void. Occasionally, the cosmic dance aligns in a display of perfect geometry, creating one of the most awe-inspiring sights visible from our planet, the solar eclipse. It is a coincidence of cosmic proportions that the sun is 400 times wider than the moon, but also 400 times farther away. This creates the illusion that they are the exact same size in our sky. When the moon passes directly in front of the sun, it fits like a key in a lock, a perfect circle of darkness covering a perfect circle of fire. Picture the moment of totality. The day turns to an eerie twilight, the birds stop singing, and the air grows cold. In the center of the sky hangs a black hole where the sun used to be, rimmed by the ethereal gossamer glow of the solar corona, the sun's atmosphere, dancing like white silk in the darkness. It is a moment where the moon asserts its presence, briefly conquering the star that gives life to our system. It is a reminder of the precision of the universe, a clockwork mechanism so accurate we can predict its movements centuries in advance, a celestial alignment that brings a momentary hushed wonder to the entire world. There is another alignment, equally beautiful but painted in different colours, the lunar eclipse. This occurs when the Earth passes between the sun and the moon, casting its broad shadow onto the lunar surface. But the moon does not disappear into blackness. Instead, it turns a deep, bruised red, a phenomenon often called a blood moon. This redness is a gift from the Earth's atmosphere. Visualize the sunlight streaming past the edges of our planet. Our atmosphere filters this light, scattering the blue and violet waves but allowing the red and orange hues to pass through. These sunset colours are bent inward, focused like a lens onto the face of the moon. When you look up at a lunar eclipse, you're seeing every sunrise and every sunset on Earth, all happening at once, projected onto the screen of the moon. It is a copper-coloured bath, a moment where the moon is draped in the colours of our own days ending and beginning, glowing with a dull, rusty warmth against the starry backdrop. Deep beneath this surface of grey dust and red shadows, there lies a mystery that scientists are still unravelling, the moon's core. For a long time, it was thought that the moon was cold and dead all the way through, a solid rock. But we now believe that deep inside there is a small, hot heart. It is likely a core of iron surrounded by a layer of partially molten rock, a remnant of the fierce heat of its creation billions of years ago. Imagine this hidden warmth, buried under hundreds of miles of cold, hard crust. It is a faint pulse, a small ember still glowing in the dark. It suggests that the moon is not just a statue but a body with an internal life, however quiet it may be. This core is the anchor of the moon, the dense centre around which the rest of the world has settled. It lies there in the eternal dark and pressure, a secret kept safe from the vacuum of space, holding the memory of the fire that once birthed the solar system. This internal heat and the gravitational tug of the Earth cause the moon to be not quite as still as it appears. The moon trembles. We call them moonquakes. Unlike earthquakes on our planet, which are violent and brief, Moonquakes can last for hours, a subtle, ringing vibration that travels through the rigid stone. Because the moon is cooling and shrinking, wrinkling like a drying fruit, its crust occasionally buckles, creating cliffs called scarps and sending these long tremors through the body of the satellite. Visualize the moon as a great silent bell. When a tremor occurs, the energy hums through the stone, vibrating for a long, long time because there is no water or soft soil to dampen the wave. It is a song of stone, a low-frequency hum that no ear can hear, resonating through the silence. It tells us that even the most stoic and silent of guardians has its shivers, its moments of adjustment. It is a world that is still settling, still finding its comfortable shape, whispering its movements into the void, a gentle rocking motion that adds one more layer to the deep hypnotic sleep of the cosmos. As the echoes of those deep subterranean tremors fade into the silence of the regolith, we turn our attention to the space immediately above the surface. We have spoken of the moon as a world without air, a vacuum where sound cannot travel. And while this is true in the way we understand breathing, the moon is not entirely naked. It wraps itself in a gossamer veil, a layer so incredibly thin that it barely qualifies as an atmosphere at all. We call this the exosphere. It is a ghostly breath of particles, a collection of atoms that are hopping across the surface, liberated from the soil by the bombardment of the solar wind. Visualize this exosphere not as a sky of blue gas, but as a faint shimmering aura of sodium and potassium. If our eyes were sensitive enough to see it, the moon would appear to have a tail, much like a comet. This tail streams out behind it, pushed by the pressure of sunlight, a long invisible flowing scarf of sodium atoms that stretches for thousands of miles into the blackness. Once a month, when the moon passes between the Earth and the Sun, the Earth actually passes through this tail. We drift through the moon's faint wake, a river of metallic atoms that brushes against the top of our own atmosphere, a silent, invisible connection that binds the two worlds together in a chemical embrace. Drifting through this thin metallic mist, let us travel to the very top and bottom of the lunar world, the North and South poles. Here, the landscape changes dramatically. The sun, always low on the horizon, skims across the crater rims, casting shadows that are incredibly long and deep. But inside some of these craters, down in the deepest basins, the sunlight has not touched the floor for billions of years. These are the permanently shadowed regions, the cold traps of the moon. Imagine standing on the rim of the Shackleton crater at the South Pole. Behind you, the ridge is lit by eternal sunshine, a peak of light. But before you lies a circular abyss of absolute darkness, a pit where the temperature hovers near absolute zero, colder than the surface of Pluto. In this eternal night, something precious glimmers. Hidden in the dark soil is water ice, ancient crystals that have been trapped there for eons. Visualize these deposits not as liquid lakes, but as diamond dust mixed with the grey soil, a hidden treasure of frost that sparkles only in the beam of a flashlight, waiting in the freezing dark, perfectly preserved by the shadows that protect them from the vacuum's thirst. This interplay of light and water brings us back to our own world, to a rare and magical phenomenon that the moon gifts to the Earth, the moonbow. We're all familiar with the rainbow, that vibrant arch of colour painted by the sun after a storm. But the moon too can paint with water. On nights when the moon is full and bright, and mist hangs heavy in the air near a waterfall, a lunar rainbow can appear. Picture yourself standing at the base of a great waterfall in the middle of the night. The roar of the water fills your ears, and the mist rises like a cold steam. The silvery light of the moon strikes this mist, and there, arcing across the starry sky, is a bow of light. To the human eye, struggling to see colour in the dark, it often appears as a bridge of pure white, a fog bow made of pearl. But if you were to leave a camera shutter open, it would reveal the truth. The moonbow holds all the colours of the spectrum, red, blue, indigo, softened and muted, a ghost of the solar rainbow whispering its colours into the night. It is a reminder that the beauty of the day exists in the night as well, merely softer, quieter, and requiring a deeper patience to see. The moon's influence is not just visual, it is structural. It acts as a great celestial anchor for the Earth. Think of a spinning top on a table. When it spins fast, it stands straight, but as it slows, it begins to wobble, tilting erratically before it falls. The Earth is a spinning top, and without the moon, our axis would be unstable. We would wobble wildly over millions of years, tipping over until the poles faced the sun, turning the Arctic into a tropical jungle and the equator into a sheet of ice. Visualize the moon as a steady hand reaching out to hold the Earth's axis in place. Its gravity acts as a counterweight, a stabilizing torque that keeps our tilt fixed at a gentle 23.5 degrees. This stability is what gives us our reliable seasons. Every spring flower, every autumn leaf, every winter snow is a gift from the moon's steadying grip. It has tamed the chaos of our planet's rotation, smoothing out the wobble into a predictable rhythm, allowing life to evolve in a world where the climate remains hospitable, and the passage of the year is a promise kept. Yet, while the moon stabilizes us, it is not perfectly uniform itself. If you were a satellite orbiting the moon, you would feel strange tugs and pulls, invisible hands grabbing at you from below. These are the mascons, short for mass concentrations. Beneath the large dark seas of the lunar surface, there lie buried concentrations of incredibly dense rock, likely the heavy remnants of the ancient asteroids that punched those craters eons ago, or upwellings of dense lava that solidified in the deep crust. Imagine flying over the Sea of Serenity. As you pass over the centre of the mare, you feel a heaviness. The gravity here is stronger, pulling you down slightly, speeding you up as you approach and slowing you down as you leave. The moon's gravity is not a smooth blanket. It is a lumpy quilt full of heavy knots hidden under the surface. These gravitational anomalies are so strong that they have dragged satellites out of orbit in the past, crashing them into the dust. It is a hidden topography of weight, a secret map of density that can only be felt, not seen. A reminder that even a dead world holds heavy memories of its violent past. Sometimes, the moon itself seems to grow, dominating the sky with an unnerving proximity. This occurs during a phenomenon known as the supermoon. Because the moon's orbit around the Earth is not a perfect circle, but an ellipse, an oval shape, there are times when it swings closer to us, a point called perigee. When the full moon coincides with this closest approach, the satellite looms large, appearing up to 14% bigger and 30% brighter than when it is at its farthest point. Visualize the supermoon rising over a city skyline or a distant mountain range. It glows with an intensity that casts sharp shadows on the ground, turning the night into a twilight. The tides respond to this closeness, rising higher and reaching further up the beach, as if the ocean is trying to leap up and touch its companion. It is a time of heightened energy, where the connection between the two worlds feels physical and taut, a moment when the moon refuses to be ignored, shining its spotlight into every window and waking the world with its brilliance. This brilliance has been the clock and calendar for humanity since we first looked up. Long before smartphones and printed schedules, we marked time by the face of the moon. Each full moon of the year was given a name by the indigenous tribes and ancient cultures, names that reflected the changing landscape of the earth below. There is the wolf moon in the deep snows of January when the hungry packs howled outside the villages. There is the worm moon in spring, when the soil softened and life returned to the earth. There is the strawberry moon, the harvest moon, the hunter's moon. Imagine the passage of a year not in numbers but in moonlight. Picture the flower moon of May illuminating a meadow of blooming wildflowers, the silver light turning the petals into pale ghosts. Picture the sturgeon moon of August reflecting off the calm waters of a lake, where the great fish are swimming. These names bind the celestial cycle to the terrestrial struggle for survival and the joy of the seasons. They remind us that we once lived entirely in sync with the sky, reading the story of the year in the waxing and waning of the light, a poetic calendar written in silver ink. This synchronization extends far beyond human culture. It reaches deep into the biological rhythms of the ocean. One of the most spectacular events in the natural world is dictated entirely by the moonlight. On the Great Barrier Reef, a few days after the full moon in late spring, a magical coordination takes place. The corals, sensing the specific light of the moon and the temperature of the water, all release their eggs and sperm into the ocean at the exact same time. Visualize this underwater blizzard. Millions of tiny pink and white spheres float upward through the dark water, swirling like a reverse snowstorm. It is a silent explosion of a life, a synchronized reproduction on a massive scale, covering miles of reef. This event happens only once a year, triggered by the precise brightness of the moon. It is a testament to the deep biological connection between the rock orbiting in space and the living creatures in our seas. The moon acts as the conductor of a silent symphony, raising its baton of light to signal the continuation of life in the deep blue dark. While the moon is a conductor of life, it is also a source of mystery. For centuries, astronomers have reported strange, fleeting sights on the lunar surface known as transient lunar phenomena. These are not permanent features but sudden, short-lived flashes of light, patches of red or pink mist, or obscuring veils that blur the sharp details of the craters. They have been seen in the crater Aristarchus, in the Alphaeonsus crater, and in the dark plains of Mare Crisium. Picture a telescope pointed at the grey silent surface. Suddenly a soft reddish glow emanates from the centre of a crater, like a dying ember fanned by a breeze. It pulses for a few minutes, then fades back into the grey. Is it a pocket of gas venting from deep underground? Is it a discharge of electricity caused by the stress of the rocks? Or is it the regolith glowing under the bombardment of solar particles? We do not know for sure. These phantom lights remind us that the moon is not entirely static, that it still holds secrets in its geology, appearing as ghostly flickers in the dark, teasing the observers who watch from so far away. Among these mysteries, there are objects on the moon that are entirely understood because we put them there. Resting in the dust of the Sea of Tranquility and other landing sites are small, peculiar panels that look like honeycombs. These are retroreflectors, arrays of glass prisms left behind by the Apollo astronauts. They are the most precise mirrors ever made, designed to reflect light back exactly to its source. Visualize a laser beam firing from an observatory on a mountaintop in New Mexico or France. The beam travels through the atmosphere, crosses the 250,000 miles of empty space, and strikes that small panel on the moon. Instantly, the light bounces off the prisms and travels all the way back to Earth, where it is caught by a sensor. This pulse of light, this round-trip heartbeat, allows us to measure the distance to the moon to within the width of a paperclip. It is a thread of light that we keep taut, a constant check-in with our neighbour. In the silence of the lunar landscape, these mirrors sit waiting, passive and patient, ready to catch our signals and return them. A permanent promise that we are still looking, still measuring, and still connected to the world we once touched. From those precise man-made mirrors resting in the dust, waiting to catch a beam of laser light from Earth, we shift our focus to a different kind of reflection, one that is scattered by the billions across the lunar landscape. If you were to kneel on the surface and scoop up a handful of that charcoal grey soil, bringing it close to your face, you would discover that the moon is covered in jewels. Mixed into the sharp, jagged regolith are microscopic spheres of glass, tiny beads that glisten like miniature pearls in the harsh sunlight. Visualize these tiny orbs, some clear, some yellow, some glowing with a deep orange or emerald green hue. They are the frozen tears of the moon, created in moments of unimaginable violence. When a meteorite strikes the surface, the heat is so intense that it melts the rock instantly, sending a spray of liquid stone flying into the vacuum. As these droplets arc through the cold silence of space, they cool rapidly, freezing into perfect, smooth spheres before raining back down to the ground. These glass spherules are time capsules of the solar system's history, preserving the chemical makeup of the ancient crust. But to the observer, they add a subtle, glittering quality to the ground. When the sun is low, the regolith doesn't just look like flat dust. It sparkles with a faint crystalline shimmer, as if the ground itself is alive with light. It is a reminder that beauty on the moon is found in the microscopic details, a hidden galaxy of glass beads resting beneath the boots of astronauts, waiting to tell the story of fire turning into ice. This creation of glass is a continuous process, driven by a phenomenon that acts as the moon's invisible weather, the rain of micrometeoroids. On Earth, we are protected by our thick atmosphere, which burns up these tiny particles as shooting stars long before they reach the ground. But the moon has no such shield. It is constantly bombarded by grains of cosmic dust, particles no larger than a grain of sand or a speck of soot, travelling at tens of thousands of miles per hour. Imagine standing on the surface in absolute silence, knowing that all around you, this invisible rain is falling. You cannot hear it, but its effect is profound. Over millions of years, this constant pelting acts like a cosmic sandblaster, slowly grinding down boulders into dust and turning the sharp edges of craters into soft rolling hills. It is a process known as impact gardening, a gentle, destructive turnover of the soil that churns the surface over and over again. This is why the moon appears so soft and rounded through a telescope, despite being made of hard rock. The micrometeoroids are the sculptors of the lunar landscape, smoothing out the rough edges of history. It creates a paradox, a world that is geologically dead and still, yet constantly changing at a microscopic level, its face being polished and refined by the relentless silent touch of the universe's dust. Amidst this grey, gardening dust, there are strange, swirling patterns that defy explanation, looking like strokes of a giant paintbrush left on the canvas of the dark seas. These are the lunar swirls. The most famous of them, Rhina Gamma, looks like a bright twisting ribbon or a splash of cream swirling in black coffee, standing out starkly against the dark lava plains. Unlike craters, these swirls have no height or depth. They are painted purely on the surface, a tattoo of light on the dark rock. Visualize these enigmatic curves, sinuous and graceful, winding across the moon for miles. They are associated with localized magnetic fields, invisible bubbles of magnetism that protect the bright soil beneath them. While the rest of the moon is darkened by the solar wind, tanned by the sun's radiation over eons, these magnetic umbrellas deflect the particles, keeping the soil beneath them pristine and bright. To look upon a lunar swirl is to see a map of the invisible forces at play. It is a visual representation of magnetism, a ghost of the moon's ancient core imprinted on the surface. They create a sense of mystery, appearing like ancient hieroglyphs or celestial calligraphy, written by a hand we do not know, untouched by the erosion of time, preserving a brightness that speaks of protection and the hidden complexities of the lunar crust. While the swirls are fixed on the surface, the moon itself is not as rigid in its gaze as we might think. We often say we only see one face of the moon, but in truth, the moon nods and wobbles, a motion known as libration. Think of the moon not as a statue, but as a boat gently rocking on a calm sea. As it orbits the Earth in its elliptical path, it speeds up and slows down, while its rotation remains constant. This mismatch allows us to peek around the edges. Visualize this slow, rhythmic rocking. Sometimes the moon tips its chin up, revealing the cratered terrain of its south pole. Other times it nods down, showing us the northern rim. It twists slightly left and right, allowing us to glimpse the eastern and western limbs that are usually hidden. Because of this gentle dance, over time, we don't just see 50% of the surface, we see nearly 60%. This libration creates a feeling of depth and dynamism. It reminds us that the gravitational lock is not a stiff, frozen handshake, but a fluid, breathing connection. It turns the moon into a three-dimensional object in our sky, revealing that it has sides, that it has volume. It is a shy reveal, a slow teasing of the hidden lands, inviting the patient observer to wait for the right moment to see just a little bit more of the mystery. As the moon rocks and orbits, it does more than just watch us. It drags against the rotation of our own planet, acting as a cosmic brake. We spoke of the tides earlier, but let us deepen that understanding to the concept of tidal friction. The massive bulges of water that the moon pulls across our oceans crash against the continents, creating friction that slowly, imperceptibly, saps the energy of Earth's spin. Visualize the Earth billions of years ago. It was a frenetic world, spinning wild and fast, with a day that lasted only 5 or 6 hours. The sun would rise and set in a dizzying flash. Over eons, the patient, heavy hand of the moon has slowed us down, stretching the day out, hour by hour, until we reach the 24-hour rhythm we know now. And the process is not finished. Every century, the day gets a tiny fraction of a second longer. The moon is buying us time. It is a gift of slowness. Visualize this interaction as a calming influence, a mother settling a hyperactive child, soothing the rapid spinning of the young Earth into a majestic, leisurely rotation. It allows for the long, languid afternoons, the extended periods of sleep, the rhythms of biology that rely on this specific duration of light and dark. We owe the very length of our dreams to the drag of the moon. Within this framework of time, there are moments of rarity that capture the human imagination, most notably the phenomenon of the blue moon. Despite the evocative name, the moon does not change colour. A blue moon is a quirk of the calendar, a hiccup in our attempt to impose a mathematical grid on a natural cycle. It is the extra full moon that slips into a season, the 13th chime of a clock that usually strikes 12. Visualise the feeling of a blue moon. It represents the unexpected, the surplus of beauty. Because the lunar cycle is shorter than our calendar month, the moon slowly drifts out of sync with our dates. Every 2 or 3 years, we are gifted a month with 2 full moons, bookends of light illuminating the beginning and the end of the page. This rarity has given rise to the phrase, "once in a blue moon," symbolising those precious, infrequent moments in life that we must cherish. It is a reminder that while the cosmos is orderly, it is not mechanical. It drifts, it overlaps, it creates patterns that don't always fit into neat boxes. A blue moon invites us to step outside of our routine, to acknowledge the special, the rare, and the extra light that sometimes graces our lives when we least expect it. When we look up at that light, our brains, hardwired to find meaning and faces in the chaos, project our own stories onto the stains of the lunar seas. This is the phenomenon of pareidolia. In the West, we are taught to see the man in the moon, a face with 2 dark eyes and a crooked smile. But this is just one story among thousands whispered by the human family. Travel in your mind to the rice paddies of East Asia. There, the shadows form not a man, but a rabbit, standing on its hind legs, pounding the elixir of life with a mortar and pestle. Drift to the islands of Polynesia, where the moon is seen as a woman named Hina, beating tapa cloth under the banyan tree. Journey to the ancient lands of the Americas, where the moon is a toad, leaping into the night sky to escape a wolf. These images are a testament to the mirror-like quality of the moon. It reflects not just the sunlight, but our cultures, our hopes, and our folklore. It is a blank screen upon which humanity has projected its oldest stories. As you gaze at the moon, try to soften your focus, to unsee the face you know, and allow the other shapes to emerge. The rabbit, the lady, the toad. It connects you to the dreamers of every continent, all looking at the same grey patches and finding their own friends in the sky. If we were to strip away the stories and look with the eyes of a geologist, enhanced by technology, we would see that the moon is not purely monochrome. There are subtle colours hidden in the grey. While our eyes see only black, white and silver, the chemical composition of the Maria paints the surface in faint, earthy tones. Visualise the sea of tranquility. To the enhanced eye, it glows with a subtle blue tint, revealing a soil rich in titanium, a metal of strength and endurance. Other seas, like the Ocean of Storms, would appear slightly orange or brownish, indicating a high concentration of iron and volcanic glass. These colours are the fingerprints of the magma that once flowed there. They tell a story of a geologically diverse world where different eruptions brought different minerals from the deep. Imagine the moon not as a black and white photograph, but as a muted painting in sepia, indigo, and rust. It adds a layer of richness to the desolate landscape, suggesting that if we could only look deeper, we would see a world as colourful and varied as a desert at twilight, painted in the oxides of ancient fires. Beneath this colourful crust there are hidden cathedrals of empty space. These are the lunar lava tubes. When the ancient rivers of lava flowed across the moon, the top layer would cool and harden into a crust, while the hot river continued to flow underneath. When the eruption stopped, the lava drained away, leaving behind vast hollow tunnels, some wide enough to house an entire city. We know they are there because we have seen the skylights, deep circular pits where the roof of the tunnel has collapsed, offering a glimpse into the abyss below. Visualize lowering yourself through one of these skylights, descending from the harsh radiation and temperature swings of the surface into the eternal stability of the underground. Inside, the tunnel is massive, echoing and dark. It is a natural bunker protected from the meteoroids and the solar wind. The temperature here is constant, a mild, unchanging cool. It is the safest place on the moon, a ready-made home waiting for future explorers. Imagine these silent obsidian hallways stretching for miles in the dark, untouched for billions of years, waiting to become the first settlements of humanity, a return to the caves, but this time among the stars. Finally, let us travel in our minds to the place of ultimate isolation, a location that offers a silence deeper than anywhere else in the solar system, the shielded zone of the far side. We often speak of the dark side of the moon, which is a misnomer, as it receives plenty of sunlight. But it is truly the quiet side in terms of radio waves. Because the moon is tidally locked, the bulk of its rock, 2,000 miles of solid stone, blocks all the radio chatter from Earth. Visualize standing on the far side. The Earth is gone from the sky, hidden beneath your feet. With it, the noise of billions of cell phones, television broadcasts, GPS signals and military radars is completely cut off. Here, in this shadow of silence, the universe can finally be heard. It is the ideal place for a radio telescope, a sanctuary where the faint, ancient whispers of the Big Bang and the birth of stars are not drowned out by the noise of humanity. It is a zone of pure cosmic reception, a place of listening. To be here is to be truly alone with the universe, severed from the digital noise of the home planet, bathed in a quiet so profound that it feels like a spiritual cleansing, a return to the silence that existed before we learned to speak, before we learned to broadcast, when there was only the stars and the stone. In that deep, shielded silence of the far side where the radio waves of humanity cannot reach, we might imagine the environment is entirely still. Yet, if you were to stand there just before the sun rises or just after it sets, you might witness a phenomenon that looks like magic. It is the horizon glow, a ghostly levitating dance of the dust itself. While the moon has no wind to lift the soil, it has electricity. Visualize the Terminator line approaching, the boundary between day and night. As the sunlight hits the surface, it charges the regolith with static electricity. The tiny grains of dust suddenly repelling one another like magnets with the same polarity leap off the ground. They float upward, hovering feet or even miles above the surface, creating a hazy, glowing aura against the black sky. It is a fountain of dust driven by the sun, a silent levitation that creates jagged, surreal rays of light stretching into the dark. This is the moon's atmosphere of solid particles, a temporary dancing veil that rises to greet the dawn and settles back down in the dark, a breathing of the soil itself. As we contemplate these floating grains, let us pull our perspective back, way back, until the moon is a small object held in the palm of your mind. We are taught that celestial bodies are spheres, perfect balls of rock, but the moon, in its frozen silence, is not actually round. It is shaped like a lemon or a slightly squashed egg. This distortion is a frozen memory of its violent, molten youth. Imagine the moon billions of years ago, a ball of liquid fire spinning dangerously close to the Earth. The massive gravity of our planet grabbed onto that molten sphere, pulling the equator outward and stretching the poles. As the moon cooled and hardened into stone, it locked into this shape forever. The nose of the lemon points directly at us, and the tail points away. We cannot see this subtle elongation with our eyes, but it is there, a permanent physical record of the gravitational embrace that shaped it. It reminds us that the moon is not a perfect abstract shape, but a physical object that has been moulded, pulled, and hardened by the forces of relationship, carrying the stress of its bond with Earth in its very geometry. This lemon-shaped world is not uniform in its texture. We have walked in our minds across the dark, flat Maria, the lava seas, but rising high above those dark plains are the lunar highlands, the terrae. These are the bright white parts of the moon that you see with the naked eye. They are the ancient crust, the original skin of the world standing miles higher than the seas. Visualize these mountains. They are not like the jagged, tectonically pushed peaks of the Himalayas or the Andes. They are rounded, battered, and immensely old, composed of a rock that reflects light brilliantly. When you look at the moon and see the bright patches, you're looking at terrain that is over 4 billion years old, a landscape that has survived the heavy bombardment of the early solar system. To stand in the highlands is to stand on the oldest solid ground in the Earth-Moon system, a white dusty wilderness of craters on top of craters, a chaotic, rugged archive that predates the oceans of Earth. It is a place of blinding brightness, where the ground itself seems to glow with the memory of the moon's birth. Buried within these blinding white highlands is a specific type of crystal that tells the story of the moon's very beginning. It is a rock called anorthosite. To understand this stone, you must visualize the moon not as a rock, but as a deep, glowing ocean of magma, a liquid world. In that ancient fire, heavy minerals sank to the core, but the lighter crystals, the anorthosite, floated to the top like foam on a cappuccino or ice on a pond. This rock foam cooled to form the white crust we see today. During the Apollo 15 mission, the astronauts found a piece of this ancient crust sitting atop a pedestal of regolith, as if waiting for them. They called it the Genesis Rock. Imagine holding a stone that is 4.5 billion years old. It is white, crystalline, and pure. It is a piece of the original raft that formed when the fires of creation first began to cool. This stone is a bridge to a time before life, before water, a solidified piece of the primordial soup that confirms the moon was once a glowing ember, slowly forming a skin to protect itself from the cold void. While the highlands rise high and white, there is a place on the moon that sinks lower and deeper than anywhere else, a scar of unimaginable proportions. Hidden on the far side is the South Pole Aitken Basin. It is one of the largest impact craters in the entire solar system, a hole so vast it stretches from the South Pole nearly to the equator. Visualize an impact so violent it nearly shattered the moon. A massive asteroid crashed into the surface, punching through the crust and exposing the deep mantle. It left a depression more than 5 miles deep and 1,500 miles wide. If this crater were on Earth, it would stretch from New York to Texas. Because it is on the far side, we never saw it until we sent spaceships to orbit the moon. It appears as a darker purplish bruise on topographical maps, a shadow of deep history. It is a reminder of the violence that lurks in the cosmos, a gigantic bowl of shadow that holds the secrets of the moon's interior, exposed to the vacuum in a silent, gaping wound that has never healed. Inside the rims of such deep craters, specifically near the poles, we find temperatures that defy understanding. We have spoken of the cold traps, but there is one specific location, the Hermit crater near the North Pole, that holds the title for the coldest place ever measured in the solar system. It is colder than Pluto. It is colder than the surface of Neptune's moon Triton. Imagine a cold so absolute that it stops the vibration of atoms. In the eternal shadow of Hermit's floor, the temperature drops to minus 415 degrees Fahrenheit. It is a stillness that is almost theoretical. Here, time seems to freeze along with the rock. Nothing moves, nothing changes. The energy of the universe is sucked out, leaving a void of cold that is perfectly preserved. To visualize this place is to visualize the ultimate rest, a deep, cryogenic sleep where the chaos of heat and motion has been banished, creating a sanctuary of ice and silence that has remained undisturbed for eons. In this frozen stillness, time itself behaves differently. It is a strange but true fact of physics that time is flexible. It bends around gravity. Because the moon has much less gravity than the Earth, time actually moves faster there. It is a tiny difference, microseconds per day, but it is real. Visualize a clock placed on the surface of the moon ticking just a fraction of a heartbeat faster than a clock on Earth. If you were to live on the moon for a lifetime, you would age slightly faster than your twin who stayed behind. The moon is not just a different place, it is a different temporal stream. It exists in a slightly accelerated flow of moments. This relativity reminds us that time is not a rigid ruler, but a flowing river that speeds up and slows down depending on where you are in the current of gravity. The moon, in its lightness, allows time to slip through its fingers just a little more quickly, a subtle acceleration in the drift of eternity. From the abstract flow of time, let us return to the connection between the moon and the living Earth. There are trees growing on our planet today that have touched the void. These are the moon trees. During the Apollo 14 mission, astronaut Stuart Rooser, a former smoke jumper, took hundreds of seeds, redwood, loblolly pine, sycamore, and Douglas fir, into orbit around the moon. Visualize these small, dormant seeds floating in a metal canister, circling the grey, lifeless rock, bathed in cosmic radiation. They travelled to the moon and back, carrying the potential for life through the valley of death. When they returned, they were planted across the United States and the world. Now, they are fully grown, majestic giants. Imagine standing beneath a sycamore in a quiet park. Its leaves rustle in the wind, its roots are deep in the earth, but its heart holds a memory of the vacuum. These trees are living monuments to our journey, organisms that have seen the earth from the outside and returned to give us shade. They bridge the gap between the biological richness of our home and the sterile silence of our satellite. While the moon trees grow and flourish on Earth, the moon itself is home to a different kind of garden, a garden of metal and gold foil. This is the graveyard of the robotic explorers. Scattered across the dust are the silent hulks of the Ranger probes, the Surveyor landers, and the crash sites of the lunar orbiters. Visualize these machines. The Surveyor 3 lander sits in the ocean of storms, its camera eye staring blindly at the horizon. It has been there for over 50 years. No rust eats away at its frame because there is no oxygen. No wind topples it. It sits exactly as it did the day it shut down, a permanent statue to human curiosity. These are not trash. They are archaeological sites. They are the first footprints of our species, mechanical envoys that we sent ahead to test the waters. They sit in the absolute quiet, preserving the gold plating and the intricate wiring, waiting for the day when perhaps a human hand will brush the dust from their solar panels and honour them as the pioneers they are. Finally, let us consider what lies within the very dust that buries the feet of those robots. The moon has no atmosphere to block the solar wind, the stream of charged particles flowing from the sun. For billions of years, the moon has been soaking up this wind like a giant spherical sponge. Trapped within the crystal lattice of the regolith is a rare isotope called helium-3. Visualize the surface of the moon not just as rock, but as a vast energy storehouse. Helium-3 is incredibly rare on Earth, but on the moon the soil is saturated with it. It is stardust trapped in stone. Scientists dream that one day this invisible gas could fuel fusion reactors, providing clean energy for the entire Earth without waste. It is a beautiful irony. The dead, silent rock of the moon, which has no life of its own, holds the potential to power the future of civilization. It has been patiently gathering the breath of the sun for eons, storing it in the grey dust, holding a gift of light and power that we're only just beginning to understand. The moon is not just a companion, it is a battery, charged by the stars, waiting for us to learn how to unlock its potential. This energy, hidden within the atomic lattice of the dust, is not the only trick of light and physics that the lunar soil performs. If you were to walk upon that grey surface with the sun directly behind your back, casting your long shadow forward onto the regolith, you would notice a strange and divine aura. Around the shadow of your helmet, the dust appears to glow with a sudden intense brightness, a halo of white light that fades as it moves away from your silhouette. This is known as the opposition surge, or sometimes the Heiligen shine, the holy shine. It occurs because the surface of the moon is so rough and porous. When the light comes from directly behind you, it dives straight into the deep cracks and holes of the soil and bounces straight back, hiding all the tiny shadows that usually darken the landscape. For a moment, the world is shadowless and brilliant. It is a personal phenomenon, a glory that is visible only to you, the observer. It travels with you as you walk, a private spotlight reminding you that your perspective creates its own reality, a luminous crown granted by the geometry of the sun and the stone. This soil that glows so brightly is not merely passive dust. It possesses a clinging, grasping quality that defies our earthly understanding of dirt. We're used to sand that falls away, grains that are rounded and smooth from the tumbling of the ocean tides. But the moon has no water to tumble its stones. The grains of regolith are microscopic shards of glass and rock, jagged and spiked like tiny medieval caltrops. Visualize these particles under a microscope, hooked, barbed, and fierce. Because of this jagged shape, they lock together like Velcro. This is why the astronauts' footprints are so crisp and vertical, looking like they were stamped into wet cement rather than dry dust. The soil holds its shape with a mechanical grip. It clings to spacesuits, to visors, to tools, refusing to be brushed away. It is a dust that wants to travel, a layer of the moon that seeks to become part of the explorer. It speaks of a world that has never been smoothed down, a place where every microscopic edge is as sharp as the day it was shattered, holding on to everything it touches with a desperate static embrace. Beneath this clinging dust lies a landscape that serves as a silent library of human history and thought. The craters you see are not just holes in the ground, they're monuments to the great minds of our civilization. In the 17th century, a Jesuit astronomer named Giovanni Riccioli drew a map of the moon and decided to name the craters after famous scientists, philosophers, and mathematicians. Visualize the surface as a hall of fame. There is the crater Plato, a dark, flat-floored sanctuary. There is Archimedes, Copernicus, and Kepler. As you drift over the surface, you're drifting over a graveyard of intellect. The ocean of storms is bordered by the thinkers who tried to understand the storms of the universe. It is a poetic legacy, where the men who spent their lives looking up at the sky have had their names written into the rock of the object they studied. It turns the moon into a celestial university, where the geography is defined by wisdom, and the map of the world is a map of the human mind. As we traverse this map of names, we notice a stark difference between the face of the moon we see and the face that is hidden. We have spoken of the far side, but let us understand its armour. The near side, the one facing Earth, is covered in those dark, smooth lava seas, the Maria. But the far side is almost entirely bright, rugged highlands. It looks like a completely different planet. Imagine the moon as a fruit with a skin of varying thickness. On the near side, the crust is thin, worn down by the gravity of Earth. When the ancient asteroid struck, they punched right through this thin skin, allowing the molten lava from the interior to bleed out and fill the scars, creating the dark seas. But on the far side, the crust is immensely thick, a heavy shield of rock. When the asteroid struck there, they could not penetrate to the molten heart. They only scarred the surface. Visualize this back of the moon as a callus, a thickened barrier that has absorbed the blows of the universe without bleeding. It tells the story of a world that is armoured against the deep cosmos, presenting a soft, open face to its mother planet, and a hard, impenetrable shield to the dark void. Drifting further out from this armoured surface, we find invisible points in space where the gravity of the Earth and the Moon cancel each other out perfectly. These are the Lagrange points, the quiet eddies in the gravitational river. Imagine a leaf floating in a stream, finding a spot behind a rock where the water swirls in a circle and the leaf stays perfectly still. These points, labelled L1 through L5, are the parking spots of space. If you were to place a satellite or a space station, or even a single stone in one of these spots, it would stay there indefinitely, locked in a gravitational embrace, moving in perfect lockstep with the moon. Visualize these invisible zones as pockets of absolute stability in a moving solar system. They are the future harbours for our ships, the resting places between the worlds. They remind us that even in the invisible emptiness of space, there is topography. There are hills and valleys of force, and there are flat plateaus of peace where we can rest without effort. From these points of stability, the view changes the human soul. Every astronaut who has travelled to the moon has reported a cognitive shift, a sudden, overwhelming realization known as the overview effect. It happens when they see the Earth not as a horizon, but as a planet, a small blue marble hanging in the terrified silence of the black void. Visualize standing on the grey, dead dust of the moon, and looking up. There is no blue sky, only black depth, and suspended in that blackness is a single, vibrant jewel of colour. It is the only thing that looks alive. You can see the swirls of white clouds, the deep sapphire of the oceans, the browns of the continents. You cannot see borders, you cannot see wars, you cannot see the stock market. You see only a fragile, thin shell of atmosphere protecting all known life. This view from the moon shrinks our ego and expands our empathy. It is the moon's greatest gift to us, a mirror that does not show our face, but shows us our home, revealing its loneliness and its precious unity in the dark. This blue marble hanging in the lunar sky dictates the lives of creatures far smaller than astronauts. Down on the surface of the Earth, the moon acts as a lighthouse for the humblest of travellers. Consider the dung beetle on the plains of Africa. At night, this tiny creature rolls its ball of sustenance in a straight line, navigating with a precision that rivals our best GPS. Scientists have discovered that these beetles are reading the polarized light of the moon. Visualize the beetle climbing on top of its ball, performing a little dance to orient itself, locking its gaze onto the soft silver glow of the moonlight to find its way home. Even when the moon is a mere crescent, its light creates a polarized pattern in the sky that the beetle can see. It connects the grandest object in the night sky to the smallest, earthiest task. It is a thread of light connecting the orbital mechanics of a satellite to the survival of an insect, a reminder that the moon is weaving the path for life in ways we are only just beginning to see. This lunar influence penetrates the walls of our modern homes and the screens of our technology, reaching into the ancient biology of the human brain. We like to think we have evolved past the rhythms of nature, but studies of human sleep suggest otherwise. Even in a dark room with no view of the sky, humans tend to sleep less deeply and for a shorter time during the full moon. Visualize your own biological rhythm as a tide. It seems that we carry an ancestral memory of the bright night. Thousands of years ago, a full moon meant visibility. It was a night to hunt or a night to be hunted, a time when the safety of the dark was lifted. Your brain, in its deep primitive stem, still remembers this. It stays slightly more alert, slightly more ready when the moon is full. It is a whisper from our past, a subtle shift in our dreams that aligns with the phases of the satellite. We are not just observing the moon, we're resonating with it, our rest rising and falling like the ocean, tethered to the rock that watches us. This tether is particularly strong in the dead of winter. Have you ever noticed that the full moon seems brighter, higher, and more commanding in the cold months? This is not your imagination. It is a result of celestial geometry. In summer, the sun rides high in the sky, and the full moon, which is always opposite the sun, rides low, skimming the treetops. But in winter, the sun is low, huddled near the southern horizon. Therefore, the winter moon rises high, climbing to the very zenith of the sky, acting as a substitute lamp for the missing sun. Visualize the long night moon of December. It stays in the sky for hours longer than the summer moon, pouring its cold, silver light onto the snow. It is nature's way of balancing the light, ensuring that when the days are shortest, the nightlight is at its strongest and longest. It creates those stark, beautiful winter nights where the snow glows blue and the shadows are crisp. A high beaming lantern carried through the longest darkness of the year. Yet, this lantern is slowly drifting away from us. We spoke of the moon's recession, the slow stretching of the tether. There will come a day, far in the future, when this drift will steal one of our greatest spectacles. As the moon moves further away, it appears smaller in our sky. Eventually, it will be too small to completely cover the face of the sun. Visualize the last total solar eclipse Earth will ever see. It is a poignant moment in deep time. After that day, there will be no more holes in the sky, no more corona dancing in the dark. There will only be annular eclipses, rings of fire. The moon will pass in front of the sun but will be unable to block it out, leaving a bright, blinding ring of sunlight around its edges. We are living in a privileged window of time, a cosmic coincidence where the moon and sun are visually equal. We are the lucky generation of the universe, able to witness the perfect marriage of the two bodies. The moon is slowly waving goodbye, and with it, it takes the magic of the total shadow, reminding us to cherish the darkness while we still have it. As we contemplate that distant future where the moon has drifted too far to gift us the perfection of a total eclipse, let us bring our gaze back to the surface as it exists right now, to the silent monuments we have already left behind. We often think of the flags planted by the Apollo astronauts, those proud rectangles of red, white and blue stiffened with wire to appear as if they were waving in a wind that does not exist. We imagine them standing there frozen in time, eternal markers of national achievement. But the cosmos has a way of humbling even our most vibrant symbols. Visualize those flags today. For decades, they have stood exposed to the unfiltered fury of the sun. Without an atmosphere to scatter the light or absorb the ultraviolet radiation, the fabric has been subjected to a relentless bleaching. The red stripes have faded, the blue fields have dissolved, and the white stars have merged into a single pale emptiness. If you were to stand before one of these flags now, you would not see the emblem of a country. You would see a rectangle of pure, stark white. The radiation has scrubbed away the political identity, leaving behind the international symbol of surrender and peace. It is as if the moon itself has accepted our offering, but stripped it of its borders, turning our national pride into a blank canvas, a white flag of truce planted in the grey dust, signalling a quiet armistice with the universe. Not far from where these bleached flags stand, there is another, smaller object resting in the dust, one that was never meant to be a symbol of triumph, but of remembrance. It is a tiny sculpture, no larger than a finger, made of aluminum. It depicts a stylized human figure, fallen and prone. This is the fallen astronaut, the only piece of art officially placed on the moon. Picture this small, silver figure lying in the eternal silence of the Hadley Rill. Next to it lies a small plaque bearing the names of 14 men, astronauts and cosmonauts from different nations who gave their lives in the pursuit of the stars. In the cold vacuum, the political tensions that separated them on Earth have evaporated. The plaque simply lists their names together, united in the dust. The sculpture does not stand tall, it rests humbly on the regolith, a permanent silent eulogy. To visualize this tiny figure is to feel a profound sense of solitude, a small metal soul sleeping in the vast, cratered graveyard of the cosmos, protected by the lack of wind and rain, destined to remain there, unweathered and undisturbed, for millions of years. Nearby, in the same dust that cradles the fallen astronaut, lies the evidence of a moment of pure, playful science, a feather and a hammer. It was here that a human hand tested the laws of the universe with a simple gesture. We all know that on Earth, if you drop a hammer and a feather, the air catches the feather, making it dance and drift while the hammer plummets. But the moon is a place of truth, stripped of the atmosphere's interference. Visualize the gloved hand of the astronaut holding a heavy geological hammer in one hand and a falcon feather in the other. He releases them simultaneously. In your mind's eye, watch them fall. It feels wrong, almost like a glitch in reality. The feather does not float, it drops like a stone. The hammer does not rush, it falls with a slow, dreamlike quality in the low gravity. They strike the grey dust at the exact same instant. It is a visual whisper of physics, a silent demonstration that without the chaotic fluid of air, gravity treats all things equally. That feather and that hammer still lie there today, collecting the slow rain of cosmic dust, a testament to the moment when we proved that in a vacuum, lightness and heaviness are merely illusions of the air we breathe. Drifting away from these human artifacts, we move across the landscape to a feature that looks less like a natural formation and more like a ruin of some ancient giant civilization. It is the Rups Rector, known as the Straight Wall. In a world defined by circles, round craters, curved domes, arched horizons, this feature is startlingly linear. It is a fault line that runs for nearly 70 miles in a nearly perfect straight line across the Mare Nubium. Imagine approaching this feature from the flat, lava plains. It rises out of the ground like a fortress wall, or the blade of a giant sword buried in the sand. Though it looks like a sheer cliff from orbit, if you were to stand at its base, you would find it is a gentle slope, a ramp rising nearly 1,000 feet into the black sky. The sun, when it is low, catches the edge of this fault, casting a shadow that looks like a razor-sharp black line drawn with a ruler on the grey paper of the moon. It creates a stark geometry in the organic chaos of the craters, a place where the crust cracked in a perfect line, creating a shadow that has sliced across the sea of clouds for billions of years. While the straight wall stands out in bold relief, other features on the moon require a ghost hunter's eye to see. These are the palimpsests, or ghost craters. In the violent youth of the moon, great basins were carved out by asteroids, but later when the lava flowed, it filled these craters almost to the brim, burying them in molten rock. As the lava cooled and settled, it shrank slightly, leaving only a faint circular outline on the surface, the rim of the buried crater pushing up from below like a submerged crown. Visualize the crater stadius. It is not a hole, but a haunting ring of bumps and ridges in the flat mare, a memory of a crater that refused to be completely erased. These features are the echoes of geology, the textural braille of the lunar surface. They remind us that the moon has layers of history, that beneath the smooth grey plains lie the skeletons of ancient impacts. To look at a ghost crater is to look at a scar that has healed over, a subtle reminder that the surface we see is merely a mask covering a much deeper, more violent past, smoothed over by the liquid stone of time. This surface, which we visualize as an unchanging expanse of grey, is actually undergoing a chemical change that links it intimately to the breath of our own planet. We tend to think of rust, hematite, as an earthly phenomenon, something that happens when iron meets oxygen and water. The moon, dry and airless, should be immune to rust. And yet, at the poles, we have found red stains. The moon is rusting. Visualize the invisible magnetic tail of the Earth stretching out behind our planet like a windsock. Within this tail, tiny traces of oxygen from our own upper atmosphere are carried into deep space. When the moon passes through this tail, it is bathed in a faint, ghostly breeze of Earth's oxygen. Over billions of years, this stolen breath has mingled with the iron in the lunar soil and the trace water ice at the poles, creating hematite. It is a slow, cosmic painting. We are literally colouring the moon with our own atmosphere, reaching across the void to leave a chemical fingerprint, turning the silver grey into a subtle, rusty red, proving that the two worlds are sharing their very elements in the dark. This connection between the worlds is usually invisible, but there are moments when the moon exerts its presence by erasing the rest of the universe. This phenomenon is called occultation. Because the moon has no atmosphere to blur the light of the stars behind it, when it passes in front of a star or a planet, the disappearance is instant. Picture yourself watching a bright star as the moon drifts towards it. On Earth, when the sun sets, it fades into orange and then blue. But on the moon, the edge is a knife. One moment the star is burning with a steady diamond brilliance. The next microsecond, snap, it is gone. There is no fade, no flicker, no warning. It is simply extinguished by the solid rock moving in the void. It creates a visual rhythm of sudden silence, a stark reminder of the moon's solidity. It acts as a celestial shutter, blinking out the light of the distant universe with a crisp, brutal precision that can only exist in a vacuum, cutting off the stream of light as if a switch were thrown. While the moon seems solitary in its orbit, cutting through the stars alone, it actually has companions that dance with it in the dark. These are Earth's quasi-satellites, often called second moons. The most famous is a rock named Cruthen. It is not a true moon like our silver companion, but an asteroid that is locked in a complex horseshoe-shaped resonance with Earth. Visualize this orbital dance. Cruthen does not circle us in a simple loop. Instead, it spirals along Earth's orbital path, sometimes moving ahead of us, sometimes falling behind, tracing a shape that looks like a kidney bean or a horseshoe. It is a celestial waltz partner that we can never quite catch, but who never truly leaves our side. It reminds us that the Earth-Moon system is not a lonely duet, but part of a larger, more crowded ballroom. We are accompanied by these silent, stony escorts, drifting in the shadows, tied to us by the invisible threads of gravity, secret siblings to the moon that we rarely acknowledge. This gravity that choreographs the dance of asteroids also reaches down into the deepest, darkest waters of our own oceans to conduct the largest migration of biomass on the planet. This is the Deal vertical migration. Every night, triggered by the setting sun and the rising moon, billions of tons of zooplankton, tiny shrimp and jellyfish rise from the cold, black depths of the mesopelagic zone to the surface. Visualize this movement as a living tide. As the moon rises, a curtain of life ascends through the water column, a dense cloud of tiny creatures seeking to feed on the surface algae under the cover of darkness. They are following the prompt of the lunar light, using the darkness to hide from predators. Just before dawn, as the moon sets or fades, they sink back down into the abyss to sleep in the shadows. It is a planetary heartbeat, a vertical pulse of life that happens every single night, driven by the celestial cycle. The moon acts as the drumbeat for this feast, drawing the ocean's life upward in a silent, synchronized swim that rivals the movement of the tides themselves. The moon's pull on the fluids of Earth is not limited to the heavy waters of the ocean. It also tugs at the delicate, invisible fluid of the atmosphere, creating what scientists call lunar rainfall. We do not often think of the air as having tides, but the atmosphere bulges toward the moon just as the oceans do. Visualize the column of air above your head. When the moon is high in the sky, its gravity pulls that air column slightly upward, causing the pressure to rise. This subtle squeeze changes the way clouds hold moisture. It has been found that when the moon is high, rain falls just a little bit harder. The drops are slightly heavier, the storms slightly more intense. It is a gentle, imperceptible influence, a reminder that the weather we experience, the sound of rain on the roof, the dampness of a storm, is being modulated by the rock orbiting 250,000 miles away. The moon is squeezing the sponge of our sky, wringing out the waters to nourish the earth below, participating in every storm that passes in the night. From that gentle squeezing of our atmosphere, where the moon dictates the rhythm of the rain, let us descend deeper, past the clouds and the oceans, into the very solid crust of our own planet, to find the pivot point of this relationship. We often say the moon orbits the Earth, but this is a simplification. In reality, they are locked in a clumsy, beautiful embrace, spinning around a shared centre of gravity known as the barycenter. Visualize a figure skater holding onto a child and spinning in a circle. The skater does not stand perfectly still. She leans back, tracing a small circle of her own to counterbalance the child. The Earth is that skater. The centre of our dance with the moon is not the centre of the Earth, but a point about 1,000 miles deep beneath the surface, buried within the hot mantle. As the moon swings wide, the Earth wobbles around this internal point. This means that every single day, the ground beneath your feet is participating in a subtle planetary sway. You're riding on a world that is constantly shifting its weight to hold onto its satellite. If you could view the Earth-Moon system from high above the North Pole, you would see that we are technically a double planet system, two uneven partners waltzing through the darkness, tethered by gravity, pirouetting around a point that lies hidden deep within the fire of our own world. It is a reminder that nothing in the universe is truly static. Even the solid ground is engaged in a continuous, heavy movement of counterbalance. If we were to leave this wobbling Earth and stand once more on the surface of the moon, looking back at home, we would witness a spectacle of light that puts our own moonlight to shame. We are accustomed to the phases of the moon, the crescent, the quarter, the full, but from the lunar surface the Earth goes through its own phases, and they are opposite to what we see. When we see a new moon, darkness, the astronaut on the moon sees a full Earth. Visualize this full Earth hanging in the ink-black sky. It does not rise or set. Due to the tidal locking, it hangs motionless in the same spot in the heavens, a fixed, swirling marble. But its brightness is staggering. The Earth is 4 times larger than the moon, and wrapped in reflective white clouds and ice. A full Earth shines with the intensity of 50 to 70 full moons combined. Imagine the lunar landscape bathed in this Earth-light. It is not a soft silver glow, but a brilliant cool blue radiance that is bright enough to read a book by. It casts sharp, blue-tinted shadows behind every rock and crater. To stand there is to be under the constant surveillance of a giant glowing blue eye that never blinks and never moves, slowly changing from a thin blue crescent to a blinding blue circle, turning the dead grey dust into a landscape of sapphire and pearl. It changes the definition of night, proving that even in the deepest shadow of the moon, the brilliance of life on Earth reaches out to illuminate the dark. Turning our gaze from the sky back to the lunar ground, we find that the surface itself tells stories of explosive youth that are visible even from your backyard. If you look at the moon during a full phase, you will see a bright white crater near the bottom, with streaks of light shooting out from it like the spokes of a wheel or the juices of a squeezed orange. This is Tycho. Visualize the moment of its creation, a mere 100 million years ago, a heartbeat in geological time. It happened when dinosaurs still roamed the Earth. A massive asteroid slammed into the southern highlands, and the violence was so extreme that it didn't just make a hole, it splashed the interior of the moon across the entire globe. These streaks, called rays, are jets of crushed, pulverized rock that were thrown thousands of miles, draping over the mountains and seas like streamers of white powder. These rays are the paint of impact. Because they are relatively young, the solar wind has not yet darkened them to match the rest of the grey soil. They remain brilliant and stark. When you trace these lines with your eyes, you're tracing the flight path of debris that travelled at supersonic speeds, a frozen explosion that wraps around the curvature of the world. It gives the moon a sense of motion, a visual reminder that this quiet silver disk was once a target, and that the scars of its history are laid out in a starburst pattern that spans 1,000 miles, a permanent firework frozen in stone. While Tycho represents the violence of impact, there is another feature that represents the exquisite beauty of light and shadow, the sinus iridum, or the Bay of Rainbows. This is not a sea of water, but a semicircular bay of dark lava, ringed by a majestic range of mountains called the Jura. But there is a specific moment, occurring once a month, that transforms this geography into a piece of art known as the Golden Handle. Visualize the moon when the sun is just rising over this bay. The floor of the bay is still plunged in the deep, pitch-black night of the lunar dawn. But the peaks of the Jura Mountains are high enough to catch the first rays of the sun. They arc out into the darkness, a curved chain of bright, glowing jewels floating in the black void, looking like a handle made of light attached to the Terminator line. It is a visual trick, a bridge of light over a sea of darkness. For a few hours, the mountains seem to detach from the moon, hovering like a celestial crown. It creates a sense of three-dimensional wonder, showing the sheer height of the lunar peaks. It is a favourite sight for astronomers, a fleeting moment where the geometry of the sunrise creates a sculpture of light, inviting the viewer to imagine gripping that golden handle and lifting the veil of night from the surface of the bay. In contrast to these jagged, light-catching mountains, there are features on the moon that are swollen, gentle, and almost biological in appearance. These are the lunar domes. Unlike the sharp, explosive volcanoes we might imagine, these are shield volcanoes, ancient blisters on the moon's skin where thick, viscous lava oozed out slowly and piled up. Picture the Mons Rumke complex in the Ocean of Storms. It looks like a cluster of low, rounded hills, a rising plateau of bumps. These are not majestic peaks, but silent, sleeping mounds. They speak of a time when the moon was geologically dying, its internal heat fading, having just enough energy to push out this last thick, toothpaste-like magma before falling silent forever. To walk among the lunar domes is to walk through a graveyard of volcanoes. They are smooth and sloping, often topped with a tiny dimpled craterlet. They soften the harsh, angular landscape of the moon, adding a rolling organic texture. They remind us of the slow, cooling breath of the planetoid, the final exhalations of a world that was once molten and alive, now frozen into these gentle, stony bubbles that have not erupted for 3 billion years. Drifting far away from the surface, out into the gravitational balancing points we spoke of earlier, the Lagrange points, we find that the moon may not be alone. We have mentioned the dust, but there is a specific, elusive phenomenon known as the Kordylewski clouds. These are vast, ghostly concentrations of dust that gather at the L4 and L5 points, 60 degrees ahead of and behind the moon in its orbit. Visualize these clouds not as solid objects, but as extremely faint nebulae, ghosts of moons that never formed. They are made of the tiniest particles trapped in the gravity well, drifting along with the moon like silent sheep. They are so faint that they are incredibly difficult to see from Earth, overpowered by the glow of the stars and the zodiacal light. But they are there. If you were floating in one of them, you wouldn't even notice. The dust is spread so thin it would look like empty space, but from a distance they form a haze, a subtle thickening of the darkness. They are the ghost moons of Earth, tenuous companions that travel the same path as our silver satellite, guardians of dust that occupy the stable parking spots of the cosmos, reminding us that orbit is a shared journey, and the moon brings its own retinue of shadow and grit. While these clouds are ancient and still, the moon continues to experience sudden, violent flashes of new energy. We often think of the moon as a finished painting, but it is still being struck. This is the phenomenon of lunar flashes. Because there is no atmosphere to burn up incoming space rocks, even a rock the size of a grapefruit hits the surface with the force of a bomb, travelling at 40,000 miles per hour. Visualize a telescope pointed at the dark portion of a crescent moon, the side facing away from the sun, illuminated only by earthshine. Suddenly a pinprick of white light sparks in the dark. It lasts only a fraction of a second, a tiny supernova on the surface. That flash is the thermal energy of a meteoroid vaporizing itself and the rocket hits, turning stone into gas instantly. Amateur astronomers see these flashes often. They are witnessing geology in real time. It is a spark of creation and destruction happening live. It serves as a visceral reminder that the solar system is still a shooting gallery, and the moon acts as a shield, absorbing the blows that might otherwise threaten us, turning kinetic energy into silent, momentary stars on its own dark face. Sometimes, the moon itself seems to disappear, not from a flash, but from a deep, suffocating shadow. During a total lunar eclipse, the moon usually turns red, but there is a scale used to measure the darkness of an eclipse called the Danjon scale. At the very bottom of this scale is a rating of L0, a very dark eclipse. This happens when the Earth's atmosphere is choked with volcanic ash from a recent eruption on our planet. Visualize this rare event. The moon enters the Earth's shadow, and instead of glowing with a warm copper light, it vanishes. The ash in our atmosphere blocks the sunlight from bending around the Earth. The moon becomes an invisible hole in the stars, a black disk darker than the sky around it. It is a terrifying and beautiful magic trick. One moment the moon is there, and the next, the sky is empty. It speaks to the deep connection between the geology of Earth and the appearance of the moon. A volcano erupting in the Philippines or Iceland can reach up, dirty the stratosphere, and turn off the light of the moon thousands of miles away. It shows that the breath of our planet, the ash and the gas, has the power to cloak our satellite in total invisibility, creating a night of absolute unmitigated darkness. When the light returns and we look closely at the floors of the craters, specifically the younger ones, we see smooth, flat ponds that look like frozen lakes. These are impact melt pools. When a massive crater is formed, the energy is so high that the rock behaves like water. It splashes up the walls of the crater and then drains back down, pooling in the lowest points and crevices. Visualize these pools. They are not made of water, but of obsidian-like glass and fine-grained rock that melted and then froze instantly. They are smoother than any parking lot, flat terraces hanging on the jagged terraced walls of a crater like Tycho or King. They gleam in the sun, distinct from the rough, dusty rubble around them. Imagine standing on the edge of one of these melt ponds. It would look like a black mirror, a frozen lake of fire that has turned to stone. It is a landscape of arrested fluidity, where the most violent motion has been captured and held still. It offers a textural contrast that delights the eye, a patch of perfect, sleek smoothness in a world of rough, broken, chaotic debris. A memory of the moment when the rock itself flowed like a river. Finally, let us consider the fragility of the moon itself. There is a theoretical boundary in physics known as the Roche limit. It is the distance at which a celestial body, held together only by its own gravity, will shatter due to the tidal forces of the planet it orbits. If the moon were to drift too close to the Earth, within about 11,000 miles, the Earth's gravity would pull harder on the near side of the moon than the far side, tearing it apart. Visualize this alternate reality. The moon, crossing that invisible line, begins to crack. Great fissures open in the crust. The sphere elongates, groaning under the stress, until it silently disintegrates into billions of fragments. These fragments would not disappear. They would spread out, forming a magnificent, shimmering ring around the Earth, like the rings of Saturn. We would look up not at a silver ball, but at a glorious arch of dust and rock, casting a permanent shadow over the equator. While the moon is currently safe, drifting away rather than falling in, the Roche limit reminds us of the tension that holds the universe together. It is the boundary between wholeness and destruction. The moon exists in the safe harbour, the Goldilocks zone of gravity, where it can remain a sphere. It is a delicate balance of forces that allows it to keep its shape, a suspended tension that keeps our night sky simple, singular and serene, rather than a chaotic ribbon of debris. While the Roche limit speaks of a distant theoretical violence, The actual experience of standing on the moon today offers a sensation that is far more intimate and surreal: the closeness of the horizon. On Earth, we're accustomed to a world that feels vast and flat, where the horizon stretches out nearly 3 miles away when standing at sea level and much further from a height. The curve of our planet is subtle, hidden by the atmosphere and the distance, but the moon is a much smaller world, only a quarter the size of Earth, and this difference changes the very geometry of your view. Visualize standing on a flat lunar plane, surrounded by the silence. Because the sphere you're standing on is so much tighter, the ground curves away from you much more sharply. The horizon is only about 1.5 miles away. It feels uncomfortably close, as if you're standing on a small submerged island in a sea of stars. This proximity creates a unique optical sensation. You can actually feel the curvature of the world beneath your boots. It makes you feel like a giant standing on a toy planet, yet simultaneously dwarfed by the towering black sky that starts so abruptly where the ground ends. There is no atmospheric haze to soften the distance, no blue fade, just the sharp, crisp line where the grey dust cuts against the infinite void, a reminder that you are clinging to a small, lonely rock drifting through the deep ocean of space. Because this rock is small, its rhythm of day and night unfolds at a pace that a human body can actually understand and even master. On Earth, the equator spins at 1,000 miles per hour, a speed impossible to chase. But on the moon, the rotation is lazy and slow. To complete one rotation takes nearly a month, meaning the sunrise moves across the surface at a pace of roughly 10 miles per hour, the speed of a casual jog or a brisk walk. Imagine landing your spacecraft on the Terminator line, right at the edge of the sunset. If you were to start walking west, matching that 10-mile-per-hour pace, you could theoretically freeze time. You could walk in the golden hour forever. Visualize yourself striding across the craters and the dunes, keeping the sun fixed exactly on the horizon behind you, living in a perpetual state of long shadows and warm, gold-filtered light. You would never have to let the night catch you. You could simply outrun the darkness, a nomad of the light, surfing the wave of the dawn or the dusk for as long as your legs could carry you. It is a world where the celestial mechanics are slow enough for a human to keep up, creating a direct physical relationship between your movement and the movement of the heavens. If you were to stop walking and let the sun dictate the light, you would find that in certain special places the sun simply refuses to set at all. These are known as the peaks of eternal light. Located near the lunar poles, particularly around the rim of the Peary crater in the north, there are mountain summits that stand so high and the moon's tilt is so slight that they remain bathed in sunlight for nearly the entire lunar year. Picture standing on one of these jagged, glowing peaks. Surrounding you, the valleys and crater floors are plunged into deep, permanent shadow, cold and black. But up here, on the high ground, the sun circles the horizon, skimming the tops of the mountains but never dipping below. It is a land of the midnight sun that lasts for eternity. These peaks are islands of energy in a sea of dark, natural lighthouses that have caught the solar rays for billions of years. To stand there is to stand in a place of permanent awakening, a sanctuary where the cycle of sleep and wakefulness is broken, replaced by a constant, unwavering vigil of light. While the peaks offer eternal light, the ground beneath your feet offers something equally profound: eternal stability. We have spoken of the wild temperature swings on the surface, from boiling heat to freezing cold, but the lunar regolith, that sharp grey dust, is an almost magical insulator. It traps heat and cold so effectively that the temperature changes on the surface do not penetrate deep into the ground. Visualize digging a hole just 3 or 4 feet deep into the powdery soil. If you were to lower yourself into that burrow, you would leave the harsh extremes of the surface behind. Down there, the temperature settles into a permanent, unchanging constant, roughly equal to a very cold winter day on Earth, about minus 35 degrees Celsius. It never changes. Day or night, summer or winter, the deep dust holds this temperature in a tight embrace. It is a thermal cocoon, a blanket of rock that protects the interior from the fury of the sun. It suggests that if humans ever live on the moon, we will not live in glass domes on the surface, but in cozy buried habitats, wrapped in the protective wool of the regolith, resting in the stable, quiet warmth of the underground. Resting in that stability, let us turn our minds to the geography of sleep itself. The early astronomers, gazing through their brass telescopes, gave the lunar features names that reflected their own poetic longings. In the northeastern quadrant of the moon, there lies a feature with one of the most evocative names in the solar system, Lacus Somniorum, the Lake of Dreams. Visualize this lake. It is not a distinct round crater, nor is it a vast deep sea. It is an irregular fading plain, a bay of lava that has spilled out and lost its borders, merging softly with the rougher terrain around it. Its edges are undefined, misty and ragged, much like a dream that slips away when you try to remember it. The surface here is a low albedo grey, smooth but dotted with small ghost-like craters. To look upon the Lake of Dreams is to look upon a landscape of ambiguity, a place where the sharp definitions of the moon blur into a soft, hazy expanse. It invites the mind to wander, to drift across the undefined borders, floating over a sea of stone that was named for the very act of imagination that brought you here. Drifting south from the Lake of Dreams, the landscape tears open into a feature that is grander and more dramatic than any canyon on Earth. This is the Hadley Reel. It looks like a dried riverbed, a winding, sinuous snake carved into the crust. But no water ever flowed here. This is a collapsed lava tube, a massive tunnel that once carried a river of fire, whose roof caved in billions of years ago to reveal the empty channel below. Imagine standing on the edge of this great gorge. It is nearly a mile wide and over 1,000 feet deep. The walls are not sheer cliffs, but steep rolling slopes littered with massive boulders the size of houses that have tumbled down over the eons. The reel meanders across the Palus Putredinis, the Marsh of Decay, curving gracefully toward the Apennine Mountains. It is a scar of spectacular beauty, a testament to the fluid history of the moon. Standing there, you would feel the immense scale of the volcanic past, looking down into a valley carved not by the patience of water, but by the fury of liquid stone, now silent and empty, waiting for a traveller to walk its dry grey floor. In the silence of these rills and valleys, there is a very faint invisible breath. We have said the moon has no atmosphere, and for all practical purposes that is true. But deep within the rocks, a slow decay is happening. The potassium-40 trapped in the lunar crust is radioactive, and as it breaks down, it releases a noble gas called argon-40. Visualize this gas seeping slowly out of the cracks in the regolith, like a phantom exhalation. It is a heavy gas, and it hugs the ground, forming a tenuous knee-high atmosphere that is thickest just before the lunar sunrise. The moon is literally breathing out the history of its own elements. This atmosphere is so thin that it would take trillions of years to fill a balloon, yet it is there. It is a ghost wind that never blows, a collection of atoms that hover over the dust, born from the slow death of atoms deep underground. It adds a layer of invisible complexity to the void, a reminder that the rocks are active, changing, and releasing their secrets into the vacuum. As this gas hovers over the surface itself is slowly changing colour. We think of the moon as grey, but it wasn't always this shade. When the fresh rock is exposed by a meteor impact, like the bright rays of Tycho, it is a brilliant crystalline white. But over millions of years, the solar wind and micrometeoroids bombard the soil, melting tiny bits of iron and coating the dust in a dark patina. This process is called space weathering. Visualize the moon getting a tan. It is a process of cosmic aging. The skin of the moon is slowly darkening, turning from the bright fresh white of its youth to the deep charcoal grey of its maturity. The darkest maria are the oldest surfaces, deeply weathered by the sun, while the bright craters are the young wounds. If you were to watch a time-lapse of the moon over billions of years, you would see it fading, its brightness slowly dimming as it absorbs the history of the solar system. It is a visual record of endurance, wearing the radiation of the stars like a dark cloak that grows heavier with time. This dark, weathering world creates visual illusions that have tricked observers for centuries. Consider the Mare Crisium, the Sea of Crises. When you look at the moon with your naked eye, this sea appears as a distinct vertical oval, a dark, elongated spot near the edge. But this is a trick of perspective, a result of the moon's curvature. Visualize flying directly over the Mare Crisium. As you change your vantage point, the oval widens, stretching out until it reveals its true shape, a perfect circular basin. It is foreshortening that squeezes the circle into an oval from our viewpoint on Earth. This geometric illusion reminds us that our perspective is limited by where we stand. The moon is full of distorted truths, shapes that appear one way from a distance, but reveal their symmetry only when you travel to meet them. It teaches us that the crises we see, the dark spots, might not be what they seem. They're often perfect circles of calm, distorted only by the angle from which we view them. Finally, let us cast our minds far, far into the future, to the ultimate destiny of the dance between the Earth and the moon. We know the moon is tidally locked to us, showing only one face. But the gravity of the moon is also working on the Earth, slowing down our spin, lengthening our days. Billions of years from now, if the sun does not swallow us first, the Earth will succumb to this gentle break. Visualize the moment of mutual tidal locking. The Earth will slow down until its day is exactly as long as the lunar month. At that point, the Earth will keep one face permanently turned toward the moon, just as the moon does to us. If you were born on the wrong side of the Earth in this distant future, you would never see the moon. It would be a legend, a myth of the other hemisphere. But if you lived on the facing side, the moon would hang motionless in the sky, never rising, never setting, a fixed, eternal guardian locked in a permanent stare with its parent. It would be the ultimate embrace, two worlds spinning hand in hand, facing each other forever in the dark. The tides would stop moving, the oceans would settle into a permanent calm, the relationship would reach its final state of rest, a frozen equilibrium of gravity and time. It is a vision of perfect stillness, where the motion of the heavens resolves into a lasting peace, a final quiet chord in the symphony of the solar system. In that distant vision of a frozen embrace, where the Earth and moon stare at one another in eternal stillness, we find a sense of perfect, unbroken geometry. But if we pull our minds back to the present, to the dynamic dance of the eclipse, we discover that the moon's silhouette is not the perfect smooth circle we imagine it to be. When the moon passes in front of the sun, blocking its fire, the final moments of light reveal the true ruggedness of the lunar landscape in a phenomenon known as Bailey's beads. Visualize the very edge of the moon, the limb, against the blinding backdrop of the sun. It is not a clean, sharp curve like a coin. It is a jagged, saw-toothed horizon of mountains, crater rims, and deep valleys. As the moon slides into place, the last slivers of sunlight stream through the valleys and gaps between the mountains. From Earth, these shafts of light appear as a string of brilliant glowing beads along the dark edge of the lunar disk. It looks like a necklace of liquid diamonds draped around the throat of the darkness. This sparkling display is a direct sensory map of the moon's topography, a moment where the valleys of another world act as lenses for the stars, breaking the unity of the sun into a scattered, glittering crown of individual jewels. As the beads flicker and fade one by one, extinguished by the advancing mountains, a single, final point of light often remains, creating the breathtaking spectacle known as the diamond ring effect. This occurs when only one deep valley on the lunar limb allows the sunlight to punch through, while the rest of the sun is covered. Picture the deep velvet blackness of the sky, the ghostly white wisps of the solar corona beginning to bloom outward like a celestial flower. And there, on the edge of the black circle, sits one solitary blinding beacon of pure white light. It looks exactly like a wedding ring set with a single colossal diamond hanging in the heavens. It is a fleeting moment of perfection, lasting only a few seconds, a cosmic engagement between the day and the night. To witness it is to feel a sudden surge of awe, a visual crescendo where the sheer power of the sun is focused into a single point by the geology of the moon, creating a jewel of light so intense it seems to vibrate in the silence of space. While the sun's light creates these grand spectacles, its heat drives a much quieter, invisible dance on the lunar surface, the migration of water molecules. We have spoken of the ice trapped in the eternal shadows of the poles, but there is also water moving across the sunlit plains, a phenomenon of restless energy. Visualize the lunar noon, where the surface temperature climbs high enough to boil water. In this heat, tiny hydroxyl molecules and stray water atoms clinging to the grains of dust become energized. They vibrate, detach, and hop upward in small suborbital arcs. They are refugees of the heat, migrating across the surface in a random walk, searching for a cooler place to land. As the temperature drops toward the evening, or if they stumble into a shadow, they settle back down, locking onto the soil again. It is a daily respiration, a planetary game of musical chairs where the water of the moon is constantly hopping away from the sun, seeking the sanctuary of the shade, creating a thin, moving vapour that hugs the ground in a desperate search for the cold. This landscape across which the water hops is not merely a collection of craters, it is a skin that is slowly shrinking. The moon is cooling down. As its internal heat, the remnant of its fiery birth, slowly bleeds away into space, the interior contracts. And just as a grape wrinkles as it dries into a raisin, the moon's crust wrinkles as it shrinks around its diminishing core. Visualize these wrinkles. We call them Labat scarps. They are thrust faults, cliffs that rise suddenly out of the ground where the crust has buckled and pushed over itself. Imagine walking across a flat plain and encountering a sudden wall of rock, hundreds of feet high, stretching for miles. These are the stretch marks of time. They are evidence that the moon is not a dead static rock, but a body that is physically changing, tightening its grip on itself. These cliffs are young, geologically speaking, sharp and fresh, suggesting that the moon is still settling, still shivering as it cools, pulling its stony blanket tighter against the eternal chill of the void. Crossing the vast lava seas, the Maria, we encounter another texture that breaks the monotony of the flat grey plains. These are the wrinkle ridges, or in the language of astronomers, dorsa. Unlike the sharp cliffs of the scarps, these are gentle rolling waves of stone that wind through the frozen lava like veins under the skin of an old hand. Picture a sea of basalt, frozen solid for 3 billion years. Running through it are these sinuous arching spines, created when the heavy lava flows cooled and buckled under their own weight. They look like roots growing under a sidewalk, pushing the surface up in long wandering lines. To walk among the dorsa is to walk on the frozen currents of a magma ocean. They add a sense of fluidity to the solid ground, a reminder of the liquid past. They catch the low sunlight, casting long serpentine shadows that snake across the darkness, mapping the stresses and strains of the ancient cooling process that paved these vast silent basins. Occasionally, the chaotic pattern of the craters is interrupted by a formation that looks startlingly deliberate, as if a machine gun had been fired at the surface. These are the crater chains, or catena. Instead of random holes, you see a perfect straight line of craters, one after the other, stitched into the crust. Visualize a comet, a dirty snowball of ice and rock, flying too close to the gravity of Earth or the Moon. The gravity tears the comet apart, ripping it into a string of separate fragments, like pearls sliding off a broken necklace. These fragments continue to fly in formation until they slam into the Moon, one by one, in rapid succession. The result is a linear scar, a chain of impacts that tells the story of a disintegrated visitor. Looking at a catena, such as the one near the crater Davy, gives a sense of sequential violence, a rhythmic drumming on the surface that creates a unique, ordered beauty amidst the random destruction, a permanent record of a cosmic convoy meeting its end. Buried within the basalt of these seas and hidden in the dust of these chains is a mineral that for a long time was believed to be unique to the Moon, a gem of the extraterrestrial. When the Apollo 11 astronauts brought back samples from the Sea of Tranquility, scientists discovered a tiny dark crystal they had never seen before. They named it tranquilityite. Visualize this mineral. It is dark, reddish-brown, opaque, and comprised of iron, silicon, zirconium, and titanium. For decades, it was the Moon mineral, a substance that existed nowhere on Earth. It is a crystallization of the silence, formed in the slow cooling of the lunar lavas without the interference of water or oxygen. Although we have since found tiny traces of it in ancient meteorites on Earth, it remains the signature stone of the Moon. To hold a grain of tranquilityite is to hold a piece of the Moon's chemical identity, a secret recipe cooked up in the vacuum and frozen in the dark, a physical manifestation of the unique geological solitude of our satellite. The violence that exposes these minerals also creates mountains in the blink of an eye. We often think of craters as simple bowls, holes in the ground. But look closely at the larger ones, the complex craters like Tycho, Copernicus, or Theophilus. Rising from the exact center of the deep floor is a magnificent jagged mountain range. Visualize the moment of impact. A massive asteroid strikes the Moon. The ground doesn't just break, it behaves like a fluid. The rock compresses, then snaps back, rebounding upward just like a droplet of water splashing up in the center of a pond when you throw a stone in. But this is rock, and it freezes instantly in that upward splash. These central peaks can be miles high, towering over the crater floor. They are mountains made of the Moon's deep crust, dragged up from the depths and frozen in a pose of defiance. They represent the resilience of the surface, a geological reflex that turns a devastating blow into a towering monument, creating a cathedral of stone in the center of the devastation. Surrounding these central peaks and covering the entire globe is the layer we have mentioned before, the regolith. But to truly understand the sensation of the Moon, one must appreciate the sheer depth of this dust. It is not just a dusting of snow, it is a deep, heavy blanket. Visualize the gardening depth. On the smooth Maria, this layer of crushed debris is perhaps 10 to 15 feet deep. But in the older, battered highlands, the dust can be 50, 60, even 100 feet deep. It is a cushion of wreckage. Every inch of it has been turned over, pulverized, and mixed by billions of years of impacts. If you were to try and dig to bedrock in the highlands, you would be digging through the history of the solar system for days. This depth creates a muffling effect, absorbing the vibrations of the moonquakes, softening the contours of the buried rocks. It means the Moon is wrapped in a thick, chaotic quilt of its own remains, a deep softness that belies the hard, cold reality of the stone beneath. Finally, let us consider how this deep blanket and the rock beneath it respond to the presence of the Earth. We know the Moon pulls the tides of our oceans, but the Earth is 80 times more massive than the Moon, and its gravity grips the Moon with a terrifying strength. The Moon has no oceans to bulge, so the Earth pulls on the rock itself. These are the solid body tides. Visualize the entire sphere of the Moon flexing. As it orbits us, the solid ground rises and falls. The crust bulges toward the Earth, a wave of stone that can be inches or feet high, moving silently through the rock. This constant kneading generates heat deep inside the core, keeping the Moon's heart slightly warm. It means the ground you stand on is not truly static. It is breathing, flexing in a slow, rhythmic response to the mother planet. We are massaging the Moon with our gravity, keeping it from freezing completely, engaging in a physical interaction that ripples through the very granite and basalt, a silent, heavy tide of stone that never ceases. And from this rhythmic flexing of the stone, this heavy, silent breathing of the crust, we arrive at the final, most profound truth of our celestial companion. We have spoken of the moon as a separate world, a distant rock, a satellite. But in the deepest sense, the moon is not truly alien. It is the keeper of our own lost memories. We live on a planet of amnesia. The Earth is active, restless, and destructive. Through wind, rain, tectonic shifting, and the growth of forests, our planet constantly recycles its surface, grinding down its mountains and burying its history, erasing the evidence of its own youth. But the moon has no wind. It has no rain. It has no plate tectonics to fold the past into the fire. It is the ultimate witness. It creates a sanctuary where time stands still. Scientists believe that hidden within the lunar dust are pieces of the ancient Earth itself, rocks that were blasted off our planet by asteroid impacts billions of years ago, which travelled across the void and landed softly on the moon, preserved there in the vacuum like letters in a bottle. Visualize the moon as a vast orbiting library, a silent attic where the Earth has stored its most precious heirlooms to keep them safe from the ravages of its own weather. If we wish to know what our world was like when the oceans were first born, or when life first sparked in the warm soup of the primordial seas, we cannot look down at the ground beneath our feet. We must look up. The moon holds the mirror not just to our sunlight, but to our deepest past. It is the external memory of our existence, the silent guardian that refused to let our history vanish into the dark. It watches over us not just as a nightlight, but as a keeper of the archives, ensuring that even if the Earth forgets itself, the story is written in stone, safe in the silence, waiting for us to remember. Now, let the weight of that silence descend upon you. We have travelled from the violent collision of the moon's birth, through the heat of the lava seas, across the jagged peaks of eternal light, and into the cold shadows of the poles. We have walked in the dust of history and floated in the low gravity of dreams, and now the journey circles back to where it began, to the stillness of your own room, to the heavy, comforting rhythm of your own breathing. Feel the gravity of the Earth holding you now, not as a force of weight, but as an embrace of safety. The moon is there, drifting above the roof, performing its slow, silent watch, just as it has for billions of years, and just as it will for billions more. It does not need you to watch it tonight. It does not need you to calculate its orbit or name its craters. It simply asks you to trust in the order of the cosmos, to trust that the tide will rise and fall, that the light will wane and wax, and that the darkness is not a void, but a soft velvet blanket pulled up to your chin. Let your mind release the images of the craters and the seas. Let them dissolve into a soft grey mist. Let the silver light fade into a warm, heavy darkness. There is nothing left to learn tonight. There is nothing left to see. You are a traveller who has returned home, your spirit filled with the quiet grandeur of the universe, your body sinking deeper into the restorative stillness of rest. The stars are turning slowly overhead. The moon is whispering its silent lullaby to the tides. Everything is in its place. Everything is well. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.